Hi, welcome to episode 5 of the 360 podcast, an all-round look at student-centered education. Today we're joined by our very own Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Brent Kaneft. He's going to talk to us about our response to Neuroteach as well as the Mastery Transcript, and we talk a bit about Park Tudor's Portrait of a Graduate. Enjoy the show. Brent, thanks for joining us today. It's good to have you with us, and just important question to start with.
Yeah.
How many bow ties do you own?
That's a serious question. Unfortunately, I didn't wear one today.
Yeah, where is the bow tie today?
I wanted to go a little more relaxed look.
No, you're just mixing it up a bit.
I'm mixing it up. So I would say conservatively, 65, something like that.
Wow.
But it's a perfect gift, right? So again, any Christmas or birthday, it's $20 bow tie, maybe $40 if you're going, a little upper class. But so it's a real easy, collection to build.
Do you have any from that? I can't remember his name, but the kid that makes the bow ties. Have you seen that?
No.
There's this. It's worth googling. There's this kid that's just. He's like 13 years old, and he's got a whole bow tie business that's nationally famous.
I got to figure that out.
Yeah.
I'll probably get it for Christmas.
Okay.
You said that.
Link in the show notes.
Right.
Okay. More importantly,
yes.
You're a new Director of Curriculum and Instruction.
That's right. Yeah.
So why don't you start by letting us know a bit about what that means right now and
where we are right now. So one of the things that everybody's heard a lot about is Neuroteach, and so I kind of came into to this role thinking we needed a summer read and we needed something we could work from, and Neuroteach fit that bill. And I like the text, and I want to hear from you guys and what you like about it. But I like the text because it's not so out there. It's not pushing the edge or anything like that, where teachers are going to read it and be super uncomfortable, and this could never happen in my school or never happen in my classroom. But Neuroteach kind of gives us this synthesized version of everything we know to this point about mind, brain, and education research. So it gives us a few practical things, but it also gives us a lot of things to think about as we as practitioners ingest that. We got to figure out how does it work for our classrooms. Not everything is going to be so easy to implement, obviously.
Yeah.
So we've been doing a couple workshops around Neuroteach, and we're going to continue that throughout the year, and really probably into next year as well. This is not a book that we want to just leave behind. This is a lot of summer reads. You read them and then you have a book club about it for a day, and then that's kind of it. So we want to use it as a reference text. And, we want any new faculty or any new staff who's coming in next year and ongoing to read it as well, sort of that foundational level. Glenn Whitman's going to be here January 17th, right?
That's exciting.
For our speaker series, our National Bank of Indianapolis speaker series. And so we're really excited about that. That's going to be a whole school effort. Students will be in front of him. I think he builds a neuron with students or something like that.
Wow.
Cool.
Right? So faculty are going to be there as well. And then he'll speak to parents and that sort of thing at night. We've just finished a couple weeks ago our parent book club. We had about 15 parents who were able to make it, but there were more than that who actually read the book and are very excited. But it's just like anything. Take our homework policy, for lower school is really targeting specific, skills, reading, obviously free reading. We want to do as much of that as possible, but we know the evidence shows that there's not much of an improvement when we give lower school students this, ample amount of homework. Mm-hmm. But for a parent, that's hard to know. Like, okay, so they have less work to do, and making sure that they're doing what they need to do as parents. So the discomfort comes from a really good place, obviously. Mm-hmm. But trying to walk with them through that was really, it was a fun night, to have that discussion. So that's where we are, I'd say, right now with Neuroteach. But tell me, what did you guys take away from the text, if anything? Hopefully something, right?
Nothing. There was nothing.
Well, what's super refreshing about...
I'm kidding.
Super refreshing about this book was just that it wasn't anything trendy.
Right.
And it wasn't anything just like, oh, this is the latest thing that's going to fix your whole school system.
Throw an iPad in the class.
No silver bullets.
Yeah.
In my mind, it's a little bit like kind of the Finnish education system, right? it's literally validating what's been known as good teaching and learning for like decades. So for me, it was just an encouragement, and I think a couple of things that came out for me. One was the focus on the beginning and the end of the lesson.
Primacy recency effect.
Right, and just looking at brain-wise what are key parts of the lesson to receive new ideas, and then what are key parts to process and practice ideas and cement ideas. And then the other thing is homework, and just how purposeful are we being with homework? How much homework are we giving? What is the idea behind the homework?
Right.
It's just been really good to think through.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a couple of things there that are important. One, it should have validated a lot of what we are already doing, and I've received that feedback from several teachers. But when we think about homework policy, right? Like it's our policy boils down to quality over quantity. But there'd be no way that you could mandate and say, all right, well, so every teacher can give X amount of homework on X, these many nights or whatever, because teaching doesn't work like that. There is the science behind it, but there's also that artistic side of knowing where your kids are, knowing what they need, knowing that, maybe I need to bump that, to the second night of the week, instead of the first. And so trying to create a policy that doesn't give agency to teachers is a real mistake, right? So we want them to be professionals, right? We want them, and this is what this book is about, to make sure that we're professionalizing our practice so that they're following that in their classrooms and that they have that agency and that freedom to make sure to target those kids and that assignment when and where is necessary. So. And what did you get, Laura?
I really liked, for me, I think it was about validating practices that I already do. It was a nice reminder of some of the ideas I explored in my master's thesis with metacognition and the writing process, and if you can change your thinking, you can change your writing. And so for me, it was a nice reminder to go back to some of the practices that I used to do all the time when I was reading a lot about metacognition, just to return to those. I feel like, as teachers, we invent, we reinvent, we tweak, and over time we might start letting go some of those really powerful practices that we do. So for me, it helped me sort of revisit what I had done in the past and sort of push it forward again. Just to remind myself of that metacognitive focus, and also that I like the playfulness of it. I really feel like something magical can happen in a classroom if the students see that the teacher's willing to play. You see that learning is fun, and that even if you're older and appear to be very serious, that the playfulness and the trial and error is part of learning and part of writing. That's part of the fun of it.
Yeah, and I love it's a refreshing text. Let me think back about these practices that I used to do, but also something Glenn touched on in y'all's podcast. It's not changing your entire classroom. It's taking, the primacy recency effect, just that 10% of, I'll just focus on this right now, and I'll get better in this one, area, and then I can move on to the next. And that's just what growth is about. Not, here's this book, memorize everything, implement it tomorrow, and you need to be perfect. It's just not going to work that way, obviously. So I like that there's not that anxiety around, I have to know every single thing. I can focus on something that I know I need work on and be honest with myself and do it, right? And ask your colleagues to hold you accountable for that.
Well, and I also like that one of the parts was it looked at sort of different forms of assessment and really pushed forward student choice. And I think in the same way that when students have choice, that's really when they're going to excel, right? When they kind of find their own sweet spot and they can kind of make their own path. And I think that for me, that's one of the great things about being a teacher at Park Tudor, is that it feels like we can kind of make our own paths, follow our own passions, obviously in line with the vision of the school, but that there's quite a bit of freedom and autonomy there, and it really lines up nicely on both accounts.
Yeah, I mean, the what of the curriculum is something we all have to agree to, right? The how is really where everybody comes in and brings their own personality and their way of doing things, and we want that, right? We want people to want to come work here.
Yes,
and have
absolutely.
That sort of
it's the best place to work.
Yeah,
it really is.
So what about you? Because you teach somehow do two
Yes.
jobs at once. So have you taken anything into your classroom from this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I mentioned this at the beginning of the year, the primacy recency effect. How am I beginning the class and how am I finishing? And really what time of day? So for example, this morning I had an 8:05 class, and I wasn't sure. I know that at 8:30 really is the target for them to start learning. So what do you do from 8:05 to 8:30?
Yeah.
And I want to get them active, but I also want to kind of prime them for the lesson we need to get into. And right now we're on Ralph Waldo Emerson. So there's nothing more that sophomores like to do than discuss transcendentalism at 8:05 in the morning.
Yeah, sure.
Right? So
It's my most philosophical time.
right, absolutely, right? So I gave him a short little anecdotal kind of just a story about me driving into work today, and then I gave them a quote that they did a free write on for 10 minutes, and by about 8:25 we were beginning to hit on all cylinders, right? And they did some group work, some pair and share stuff, looking at the Harvard Divinity School address, where I gave them specific questions to extract from the paragraphs. And then we finished with that, their answers to those questions. And so really just paying attention and being mindful of how I'm structuring the class. And then I've been doing that for the last couple of years, but now we're really paying attention to, this is an afternoon class that means something way different than that 8:05 class.
Yeah.
And I'm just continuing on that trend, for now, right? To make sure that I'm aware of those things, right? That this brain is not primed to learn right now, and I need to be aware of that and how I instruct. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, we also have some teachers, some pilots, about 25 teachers piloted their program, the Center for Transformative Teaching and Learning's program, Neuroteach Global, which is a certificate program that they are beginning and rolling out in January. Part tutor teachers are not going to take part of the rollout or anything like that, and I will actually, I'm going to take the course in January, and I'm going to get the feedback obviously from the pilots and see what they thought of it and whether or not it's right for us. But some way, obviously, again, to look at professionalizing, partnering with the CTTL, and thinking of, how can we get our staff, certified in mind, brain, and education research. And maybe that's not the way, but to really vet that before we roll it out for the whole school. So I'm excited about to see what it's like.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, this is rapidly becoming a core value in
Right.
in terms of the pedagogy here, which is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So.
Do you see a connection between Neuroteach and Mastery Transcript?
I wonder what Glenn Whitman thinks about the Mastery Transcript. I really don't know. And when he gets here in January, I do plan to ask him.
What do you think, Brent?
Well, that's I do. Looking at Scott's work over the years, and then of course, the podcast that you guys just did with him. I love the idea of no grades. It's slightly embedded into the way I grade. I grade on a contract scale, which is more of a proficiency-based approach, but it's still got a grade attached to it, and there's still that sort of extrinsic motivation that I'd really like to turn internally, obviously.
Right.
So, we are not, as a school, going to this model anytime soon. And as he talked about, they're going to give you the option of mastery tract and a traditionally graded tract,
Right.
I do think the idea is right, so last night, for example, if you see the posters behind me, we are beginning a process of Portrait of a Graduate. And what this is essentially is finding the academic, social, and emotional competencies or qualities that we want to finish with. We want our graduates to have a good foundation in.
Yeah.
And last night, about 30 alumni came up to Foster Hall, and we had this discussion, and we had some graphic facilitators there. That's why these boards are behind me. And somebody asked a great question. They said, when I was in high school here, I was taking chemistry, and the focus really that was on problem solving. And I've forgotten all the chemistry, but I've remembered the problem solving process.
Nice.
And that's what stuck
Absolutely.
with me, throughout the years. And, that idea that, content should drive this, but we know that we're going to forget content because it's just not applicable to us anymore at some point, right? And if the only way that content is applicable is you got to memorize it for this test, it's really difficult to see. I don't know how we can embed that knowledge in a more meaningful way that's going to last. And so, Portrait of a Graduate is sort of a step toward that. Mm-hmm. I don't imagine this is mastery, but it's something like that, where we're going to be able to assess kids on the qualities that we as a community think are the most important. And it's important that those qualities be, that we're able to assess them, mm-hmm. right? So as we'll talk about in our discussions, a quality like integrity is great. It's a great value, but how do you assess that in a student?
Yeah.
It gets a little more complicated. It kind of falls under like when Scott was talking about whether it's, math and foreign languages have really defied the mastery model, mm-hmm. right? Like, well, how does integrity fit into that, or empathy? I know the English department was talking about empathy,
right.
a couple weeks ago. How do you assess that? How do you develop? There are
right.
ways of developing, I think, but how do we know this person is empathetic versus that person? So whatever we come up with, like a problem solving, we need to be able to integrate that into our curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
So
what I like is that you have the flexibility and sort of the room to include sort of the traditional academic hard skills,
mm-hmm.
not necessarily the content, but certainly the skills,
yeah.
while also including the social emotional learning, and then some of the values that we uphold.
And it makes people uncomfortable when they hear something like, you don't necessarily need to have read Hamlet, and you're looking at me as an English teacher like,
no, I'm okay with it.
I know, but it does bring you to a place of discomfort because some people have had that, and that's their experience. And what this model that he's talking about is that content drives the outcome, but it's not necessarily so important in every situation, or that we don't need the breadth of it that we have right now. We
mm-hmm.
need to focus on in a deeper way on specific like in history, specific events that we want all of our students to really be knowledgeable of, that we think are the most important as they go forward away from Part Tutor.
So just to get a picture of your vision and your picture of the graduate, your portrait, what sort of, top 3 things that you think we could assess, that we could measure, that we could look for in a graduate?
Yeah, this is a great question. I do a lot of reading about, what's coming down or what's coming in the future. What is the job market going to look like?
Right.
What is it? It's something like kids today will have 8 jobs. Is that right? Something like that.
Yeah.
Or 8 different professions. So the jury's out on AI. I mean, there's a general AI, and there's what's the other type of AI? Anyway, your microwave is an AI, but then the general AI, like a human. I don't know. Where we are in that, how close we are to that.
Uh-huh.
So, how many jobs are going to be replaced by automation? There are all sorts of things. It's a really turbulent and exciting time.
Mm-hmm.
So, thinking of like that, I think adaptability is
mm-hmm.
a key competency and quality that we could develop and assess in our students.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it might look different in English class and math class and science class, so on and so forth, but that's where the real art comes in for our teachers, of designing assessments to really see, is this kid adapting well? What do they do mm-hmm. when I change the situation or change the environment, or what
right.
happens, right? Do they, figure out that they need to learn more, or do they curl up and say, I'm scared of this?
Uh-huh.
And so we have to hopefully give them that sense of confidence, mm-hmm. right? Moving away from Part Tutor, that, in 3 years you may be something different, and in the next 5 years you're something different, and you're going to have to learn a whole new bag of tricks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the skills to do it, actually, though.
Yeah.
So I think adaptability is, at least on my list, but again, Portrait of a Graduate it's alumni, it's students, it's staff, it's administration, it's parents, it's a lot of different, it's coaches, it's a lot of different voices that will come into this process, which actually makes it sort of messy, but we really want to isolate 5 or 6 so that we can do it well, so
right.
that it's simple, it's usable,
Absolutely.
we all understand it, we're speaking the same language. So I'd say adaptability, it's hard to argue against collaboration. And then metacognition, as you mentioned before, I would say just being aware of how we learn and knowing how we know. I think that could play a huge role in that, but I'm not married to anything. At this point of the game, we are very, in the early stages of all of this, so these are just some of my thoughts at this point. So
yeah. That was Brent Kaneft, Director of Curriculum and Instruction here at Park Tudor School. Join us next time as we keep chatting with Brent about exciting new initiatives in teaching and learning here at the school.